So welcome everybody. Pleased to welcome you and to welcome Etienne and Anne-Hélène on that subject, how to manage French employees when you are a foreign manager, a real program for you, British people. So Etienne is managing a law firm, and Anne-Hélène Squarneck is founder of Authentic Human Resources. They will tell you more about their companies. However, in the meantime, I let them to explain to you how to manage French people. Up to you, Etienne and Hélène.
Thank you, Catherine. Yes, we are pleased to inaugurate this first session of what we intended to make as a workshop. The purpose of which will really to share our experience and share with you. So it's really an exchange of experience regarding the management of French employee where you're not based in France. Maybe what we could do before starting talking about our topic is for the audience, maybe you could explain whether you do have French employees and how many you are managing, so that we can maybe address in more specific ways the purpose of our workshop today. Steve, do you want to start with that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So I'm currently the client solutions manager here at ITC. So I'm Irish, but based in France right now. I've managed French teams in the past, but in Ireland. And now since since November, I've been managing a French team of, I would say, 8-9 people at the moment, all project managers in the translation field.
Okay. Thanks. Alexa?
Yeah, so I've been working in France for 10 years now. I'm a development manager for Agility Solutions. So we're a general contractor based in France, but we're kind of a mix of British and French employees. So I think we have about 10 French employees in France, but we've also got other offices based in Luxembourg, Italy, and the UK. So it's a bit of a mix of nationalities. And I myself, I'm Scottish, but I've been in France for 10 years now.
William?
How you doing? William Quinn is my name. I'm based in Dublin, in Ireland. I work with Stephen actually in ITC. My responsibility is I'm over the sales team in France and also quality and vendor management. So, and also over a team in the USA. So it's the contrast between managing a team in France versus managing a team in the USA, which I find interesting.
Okay, great.
So to learn a bit more would be great.
Okay, thanks. So as a matter of introduction, my name is Etienne. I'm running the employment law department of my firm named Berry Law, and we are the founding members of Your Expert in France, together with Anne-Hélène and a couple of other services providers. The purpose of which is to offer foreign investors a platform for investing in France by recruitment, offices of accounting, insurance, and many other services that you can find on our platform, the website. So I'm the lawyer of this presentation, specialized in employment law, and I will let Anne-Hélène introduce herself to this effect. Thanks.
So hi, so I'm Anne-Hélène, and I'm a freelance HR advisor. And I'm working with different clients when they need, like I would say, HR expertise to support them on various HR projects. So I'm working with different clients on I would say, on a daily or weekly based. And I'm also part of the Your Expert in France team.
Exactly, and this is why we proposed this workshop, because we found out while working for investors and many Irish companies entering into employment contracts with French employees, we found out that there were many issues regarding the way these employees could be managed under French laws, and how difficult it could be prior hand, but how easy it can be if we address several issues properly. And this is the purpose of this workshop, to share our experience on how to ease the pain of handling the management of French teams when you are based abroad. And the first item we wanted to cover for your benefit was maybe the trickiest way of managing French employees, where you're not eye to eye with your employees, is how to address the working time regulation. Because as you can know, and you may know, under French laws, the working time regulation is first based on the working time address on a weekly basis, and the minimum is 35 hours a week, so that every hour above 35 hours is paid as extra hour. But when you're not working physically with your employees, how do you monitor the number of hours your employees are performing in France? And this is a kind of a tricky issue because when the employment contract terminates, then it's often the case where employees challenge the decision of dismissing them, and on top of that, request the payment of extra hours. And when you're based in Ireland, for instance, we had this employment contract that we need to implement, where the working time was 40 hours a week, so that the employees, when the employment contract provides for that number of hours, claim the payment of extra hours with increased rates. And many employers do not know that French law proposes a solution whereby you do not have to pay these extra hours, because you can implement what is named forfait jour, which is a working time regulation where you do not monitor working time on a weekly basis and on hours, but rather on days worked per year. And when you're not on a day-to-day basis physically present with your employee, it's much more comfortable to monitor working time regulations in days a year rather than hours a week, so that you don't have to bother about the number of hours your employee work, but only on the number of days your employee work. And so many foreign companies do not know that this is available under French law, subject to certain conditions, the principle of which being the fact that you're subject to a collective bargaining agreement that proposes such mechanism. But when it's the case, then it's very easy for you to track the working time regulation of our employees. And as we will address that with Anne-Hélène, it draws several consequences on a management standpoint, because the only thing you have to worry about when the forfait jour is in place is first the number of hours of rest the employee is entitled to on a daily basis, which is obviously the night rest, which is 11 consecutive hours. And the second part of the rest is the weekly rest, which is 11 hours for the night and 24 consecutive hours. So that at the end of the day, on a weekly basis, it is 35 hours, which mostly include Sundays. So this is the first part of what you have to worry about on the forfait jour. The second aspect you have to worry about, and this is where we hand over the floor to Anne-Hélène, is the workload that you will impose on your employee, because all employees do not work as quickly or with as efficiency as the others, and this is where you have to manage your workforce properly when you impose them a workload that they should do on the forfait jour basis. Anne-Hélène?
Yeah. If I just come back to what you said previously, and just to go back to the beginning of the employment contract, and from my experience, loads of managers don't have a view on the employment contract, and that's very important, because every manager should be aware of the type of forfeit that the employees are And that's very important because some employees can be on forfait jour, like daily forfeit, and some other employees can be on hourly forfeit. So there's a question as well as asking that managers should be asking themselves, okay, is everybody on the same forfeit or are they in different forfeit? And in this specific aspect, obviously the control working time is different. So from my point of view, what is better is to have all employees on forfait jour, daily forfeit. So it's easier to keep track of the working hours or the working week rather than during the day. I don't know if that makes sense to you. So that's very important. And then when we move to forfait jour, what is important as well is, and that's quite funny, but usually in companies, we keep track of the holidays. We've either got Excel spreadsheet for the holidays, or we've got like some HR system to keep track of that. However, legally, and I'm sure Etienne will agree with me, what is important regarding the French law is to ensure that we keep track of the working time and not keeping track of the holidays. So with some clients, I've put in place some trackers, Excel spreadsheet, for example, where we can keep track of the holidays and of the working time. And that's quite important because if there's a legal, like an inspector coming in, we are able to show both. And that's where that's mandatory, basically. So that's a very important thing. And then when you've got the forfait jour, the daily forfeit, so you're quite happy. So people are working far away in France and you keep track of that. However, the checking the workload is very important. And as Etienne said, obviously, some people are working, I would say, faster and have more things to do than others. And that's the way it is. And for that, what is important is to check up on employees on a regular basis. And in some some clients I've been working with is to I would say to put informal and formal one-to-one in order to assess their workload. And that's what I'm doing with some clients. I'm working hand in hand with managers. Managers obviously are working on objectives, and we're going to talk about that later on as well. But on my side, what is important is to ensure that the workload is, I would say, sufficient enough, or is not too much, because there's the two sides of it, to ensure that people are I would say, are working well and are kind of happy in their job. Obviously, at the moment and with the pandemic, what happened a lot is like people are very lonely, they work on their own a lot, and that has a great impact on their workload and on their health. And that's something that at the moment I'm working with and I'm working on to ensure that managers and employees are working well together. And that's a very important issue at the moment. And it's not only a French issue, obviously, but this is something that I keep track on with my clients. Then the thing is, I don't know if you want to add something, Etienne, but I want now to move to what we call the RPS in France, PSR in English, which is the psychosocial risks, which are quite important as well at the moment. So I don't know, Etienne, if you want to add something before we move on.
Just a little legal stuff that I wanted to add is that when you draft the clause in the employment contract regarding the forfait jour, One thing that is important first is, as I said, to refer to the applicable collective bargaining agreement. And the second aspect is to provide for regular one-to-one meeting with the manager regarding the workload. And this is where we really want to focus on with Anne-Hélène, is that you really need to assess PSR with respect to the workload. And so you have, at least depending on the collective bargaining agreement, it's either once a year or twice a year. You can provide for more, and the individual meeting with the manager to assess the workload and the compatibility of the forfait jour with the workload. But the second, another provision that needs to be made in the employment contract is that whenever the employee feels that the workload is too heavy for him or her, then the employee should call for an interview in order for him or her and his or her manager to refresh the workload and think about the ways of leveraging this workload so that there is no risk of PSR. The drawback before Anne-Hélène moves into the operational aspect of PSR is that under French law, the employer has a duty of care regarding the health condition of the employees, and it's an obligation that is just only I would say a mere obligation, but it's really an enforceable obligation against the employer, so that the employer does not react sufficiently when the employee calls for help or assistance. Then there is what we call a faute inexcusable, which is a material breach of the commitment of the employer that entail the possibility for the employee to call for an immediate termination of the employment contract on the shoulders of the employer. So this raises several indemnity consequences, but it's really a duty that is on the employer's shoulder to prevent the consequences of burnout.
Yeah, and regarding that, we're going to talk about it a bit later as well, but in France, there are some mandatory meetings that should happen in the company. And with some clients, obviously, I've put this mandatory meeting, but we've put more meetings in order to check up on employees. It can be formal or informal meetings, either with the manager or with the HR, but allowing to have a regular check with employees, specifically at this time, which is very important, because people are on their own. They think they can manage their workload, they can manage it, and then it's like a kind of a negative spiral where they get in until they get sick, and when they get sick, it's too late. So the best thing to do is to really have regular check with them, first of all, and the second one as well is and not because I'm HR, but yes, still a little bit. I think it's quite it's interesting for the employees to have a one-to-one with an external person, a person who is not in the business. So the HR has the ability to have a helicopter view and be the go-between the manager and the employee, because sometimes the employee just doesn't know how to say things. And with me, sometimes the employee say, okay, I can have some kind of freedom of speech to say things. So we all have some kind of important role. The manager has an important role, but the HR has also an important role to do the go-between. Another important aspect as well is I would say what is important is to put a specific attention to middle management. Why middle management? Because they are, I would say, pressed, or they are stressed above with the manager and below with the clients and with the employees. and they receive most of the stress from everywhere. So the middle management is, I put specific attention on middle management who are very stressed from everywhere. Now going to the PSR, as we say in English. It's kind of funny because the PSR are very different from one country to another, and I did some studies about the PSR, and in France we've got 7 different types of PSR. In Australia it's 11, in Canada it's 13 if I can remember, in the UK it's 10, so it's very different. At the end of the day, they are all about the same thing. And what is important is to ensure they are all tackled or they are all watched in, to ensure that we are not falling in one of them. I would say in France, we've got a document, Etienne's going to talk about it as well, which is the document unique, which is a document allowing to I would say to have a view on the different PSR in France and what in terms of action do we put in place to ensure that this PSR are tackled by the company. To tell you the truth, this document is a pain to put in. But it is really, because it's like an Excel document where you have to put in all the problems that can happen in the company and all the action you would put in place to ensure that the problems don't happen. So it's quite of a difficult document to put in. But at the end of the day, it's a very interesting document because, again, it allows to check and to ensure that we are not going into PSR difficulties or problems. Etienne, do you want to talk a little bit about this document?
Yeah, this document is compulsory for any company in France, but also where the foreign company has employees in France. It's called in French DUER, Document Unique d'Évaluation des Risques, and in English it's Single Document of Risk Assessment. It's usually under the form of an Excel chart when you list position by position or duties by duties, the risk entailed by the running of the operations. So it's as Hélène said, it can be burdensome to draft it, but it's compulsory to have one. And last year, all my clients, but all operators in France had to update it due to COVID-19 because this was a new risk that needed to be assessed, and the ways of avoiding the contamination of COVID within the workplace or even at home. So it's really something that is burdensome, but needs to be addressed. And coming back to our topic today, the assessment of risk with respect to workload or burnout needs also to be addressed in this document. And this can be a little bit worrying by the operators because they can say that if we mention that risk, it can mean that we are aware that there is a likelihood of the risk to happen. But we should refrain from thinking that way, but rather assessing how in the world me as a manager or the legal representative of the company, address most of the issues that can arise in the working relationship. And the fact of avoiding burnout, for instance, by addressing what we can do as an operator to avoid that. And that means that we can call for a regular meeting with the employees. We can run management team where this issue should be addressed. And one thing that is very important, and this is where I have my lawyer hat, is that when you are facing a litigation down the road It's better for your lawyer to have evidences of what you did in order to prevent issues to arise, rather than having nothing to say when the employee says, but I've made several alarms of my workload and nobody answered to that. It's obviously very advisable for us, and this is also the topic of this workshop, to have you have written evidences, minutes of these meetings with your employees, regular meetings, the fact that you asked questions to your French employees on how do you feel about this new mission I'm wanting you to perform now in the coming weeks. It's always better to have this kind of evidences rather than having nothing, just have phone calls or Teams meetings or whatever, because you're remote, you're working, your employees work remote from you, and you don't want to bother about keeping track of what's been said. It's better to have these minutes, and it's highly recommended from our side as legal advisors to have you properly keeping track of what you said in these documents. And obviously having this single document of risk assessment is also something that would be required in front of the judge to provide, where there will be this line of avoidance of burnout. You will be able to evidence the fact that this is something you were concerned about.
Yeah, if I may add something regarding this document, the English document is not the French document, because I had some English, and I have some English clients who say, no, that's fine, I've got it. It's in English and I can provide it to the lawyer anytime. It doesn't work that way in France, because all legal document should be in French. And it's not a matter of only translating what's been done in England. It has to be showed by facts, which is doing one-to-one, talking to employees, acknowledging people's workload and doing something about it, finding solution for the employees. And that's very important. And sometimes I had my clients saying, okay, it's in English, I don't know how to do it in French. I need some help because it's a little bit different. So this is something which is quite important.
And in connection to that and the assessment of the workload and the pressure that can be made upon the employees, what Anne-Hélène and I wanted also to focus about were the targets that you want to impose on your employees, that very often is liaised also with the remuneration and the variable compensation, especially if you recruit salespersons in France to develop and promote your business. And then this is really something that we want to insist upon, and I will hand over to Anne-Hélène in this respect, because it's a very operational issue. It has legal constraint as well. I will come back to that after Hélène talks, but really the driver is the operational standpoint.
Yeah, if I just come back, I'm just thinking of a different thing, which is quite important as well, is about remote work at the moment, because what we can see as well in France, and I'm sure it's the same in all countries, is the fact that people are moving. I don't know if your teams are based in Paris, but at the moment, what I can see with my clients is employee being fed up with Paris and just want to move to a different town in south of France, and somewhere where it's more sunny and with less stress. And what is important? Sorry.
Or Brittany.
Or Brittany, yeah, nice as well. The thing is, what is important is to ensure that there's something written, like addendum, when people are moving to a different working place. Why? Because again, and I'm coming back to that, because there's a risk assessment to that. And there's also a an impact on their workload and an impact on where people need to be when. And I'm just explaining that because it's quite important. I've got a client where based in Paris, and some employees moved to Brittany, but they have to go back and forward all the time for the client based in Paris. So we had to put some rules and regulation to ensure that we are, as a company, in the legal constraints. We can't just say, okay, if you want to move to Brittany or south of France, just do it and everything's going to be fine. It can't work that way. You need to have an addendum, and that's very important because, and as I always say, sorry, everything is fine until something goes wrong. And when something goes wrong, it's the responsibility of the employer, and it's always going to be the responsibility of the employer. So we have to the employer has to assess the risk of that and to ensure that you've got the right structure, allowing employees to work either from home in Paris or home wherever in France or in another country. And I think that's very important, as long as, and they can also go working, I don't know, in China, whatever, but you have to put that down on paper. Addendum is the best thing, because it will, there's a risk assessment to that as well.
That's for sure. And although under French law, you can work remote only on the basis of an exchange of SMS or email, it's not a proper way to run a business. The remote work is also a way of functioning of the company, and hence it should be set forth under a more on broader scope in terms of management. And under French law, it can be done again under an SMS, but most companies do that on the basis either of a unilateral document, or most likely, which is more or less something like an internal policy, but most likely under a collective agreement entered into at the company level. And it's really important that all parties are involved in the negotiation of the remote work, not only for the purpose of who is paying what for remote work, whether or not you're providing your employees with a laptop, with a mobile phone, and whether or not you will pay for the expenses that are triggering by the remote work. But it's also a kind of management aspect, and this is where we come back to our topic today, because it's another way of managing your workforce in France.
Yeah, and I think again it's very very important in terms of management. And if we move to a part about the objectives, how to set up objectives with the employees, this is something which is done, I would say, worldwide. However, this is in France, and again, in order to be able to follow up with your different employees, I would recommend to have different meetings with your employees to again assess their workload, assess how they are performing on their objectives, and how together we can move from one objective to another. And I think what is quite important, and that's again from my experience, today nothing is written in the way that you can set up an objective at the beginning of the year, but there are so many changes, and the changes are so fast and rapid that the company needs to be able to change the objectives of the employee, not only regarding the impact of the business, but also the impact of and the workload of the employee, and that's very important. So with some clients, we assess every quarter the objectives. We've got quarterly objectives, and we've got yearly objectives as well. And we assess that every quarter in order to ensure that the objectives are the right objectives today. And if the objectives are changing because of the company or the, I don't know, issues with clients, the growing of the company, we can change the objectives. And I think that's part of, I would say, a state of mind as well, and the cultural change in the company, where we don't set objectives for a year, we set objectives for a quarter, and then we'll see together how we can move forward. And I think that's the best way for me today to move forward with employees. Do you want to add something, Etienne, on that?
Yeah, and the first, from a legal standpoint, again, any change to the remuneration of the employees need to be accepted by the employee, so that you have to propose and submit amendment to the employment contract on the basis of this change of remuneration, because when the objective change, then it's very often that the remuneration also changes as well, and accordingly. So it's very important to prepare the amendment to the employment contract on the basis on the remuneration. But going back to our topic, when there is too much pressure on the employee in order to reach the objective, because as Anne-Hélène said, when you assess the objective at the beginning of the relevant period, and the employee expects that given the circumstances, whatever they are, and here we have the COVID crisis, he will not be likely to reach the objective. He knows that there will be an impact on his remuneration, but he also knows that there may be an impact on the fact that he will or will not remain within the structure, because the company may not be aware of the local constraint, and maybe have higher expectations regarding the objectives. And when the employee does not perform sufficiently well, then this may entail some adverse consequences, so to speak, regarding the continuation of the employment relationship. So it's when we come back to what we want to address and maybe make you aware of, is really to have regular discussions with your employees regarding the workload, regarding the remote work, and regarding the targets to achieve, so that if there are any changes to make, they can be made as early as possible, in order to have the employee more comfortable with the way he works for us, because the performance will be better, and it's unlikely that he will go on illness because he fears that there will be something wrong in his contractual relationship with you. And so it's not a habit from French employees to go and seek for a sickness leave, but when you are subject to too much pressure, given the way the health coverage in France works, it's when an employee goes to a doctor and say, look, I'm under too much pressure at work, then 99% of the case, the doctor will make a sickness leave. And so you will end up with your employees not working any longer for you for a certain period of time, which could raise issues if he's the only salesperson in France, if they are a very limited person, because when the team in France is less than 10, when an employee goes on illness, the workload is spread to the other employees, who may also suffer about these adverse consequences on their own workload. So this is really an issue, and the sooner the better. The sooner it is addressed, the better it is from a management standpoint.
Yeah, and having said that, when talking about the entretien obligatoire, in France, there's this entretien obligatoire where you have to do it every 2 years or you have to do it in a more regular basis if employees are on sick leave, for example. And I think this entretien obligatoire is I would say is a good exercise. Also, it can be a burden for the manager, because I say, okay, I have to do the entretien obligatoire. But at the end of the day, this entretien obligatoire is good as it allows to check how the employee is assessing his own workload and what we can do about it. What is important, again, in France is the right of training. I don't know if we say that way, Etienne, but training is a very, obviously training is important everywhere in the world, and we have to develop our competencies. Employees have to develop their competencies. What I found out is that my foreign client doesn't know that there's a specific budget allowing to train people. And this budget from the OPCO, as we say in France, allows to set up training programs for employees in order to develop their competencies. And that's during the entretien obligatoire, mandatory meeting, that we can discuss the type of training that people want. And it allows as well the management to have a more global view and situation about the training needs, not only the training needs, but also what employees want to do and how do they want to move in terms of competencies. So this being a link as well with the OPCO to know what is the budget allocated to your company and how does it work, it's very important as well. I don't know if you want to add something, Etienne, on that?
No, that you're perfectly right. I mean, this is you can see that there are many places for individual interviews with your team in France. There are these once a year or twice a year meetings with respect to the forfait jour. There is this meeting every 2 years regarding the personal situation of the employee. And there are, on a case-by-case basis, meetings that needs to be documented, need to take place and be documented when the employee calls your attention on his or her workload. So we really wanted to make you aware about this situation, because it's not that much the case in other countries. And these are really ways for you to run your business in France with your French employees when you're not having them physically at the same place. So you monitor the working time regulation through the help of the forfait jour. And as Hélène was pointing it right, if not all your employees are under a forfait jour, then you have to be concerned about, because again, the 35 hours is not the 40 hours a week. And you do not run and monitor the working time regulation the same way. And second, the aspect of the health and the security of your employee regarding his or her workload, and the fact of avoiding any risk on your hand as an employer. Regarding the consequences of your management with French employees is very peculiar and need to be really addressed very carefully, because, as you know, the French labor code is very protective to the employees, and also labor courts are very protective with the employees, specifically when it relates to the healthcare. So it's really important, and this is where we wanted to address with Hélène, these differences between how you handle French employees as opposed to how you handle your other employees around the world. Do you have any questions or experience you wanted to share with us, or maybe aspects that we did not address that you would like us to address? No questions?
No, I think just on a general point, I can definitely, having managed French teams in Ireland compared to managing French teams in France is a lot different. And obviously there's a lot more regulation and that goes into France. So that's definitely important. The forfait jour is interesting. I know myself, I'm on forfait jour, but it's something I'm not 100% on. I know we have a HR manager that takes care a lot of this stuff. But it's interesting, certainly interesting to know. I think I suppose it's something not covered. I'd be interested because I'm similar to William. I'm managing US and Canadian teams and people in France, and then also our people in Ireland, and then also people in France. Would you have any kind of suggestions or recommendations just as a general approach to managing French staff compared to others?
Well, the French employees are, and I will let Anne share her experience in this respect, but French employees, it depends the level of seniority of your employees. If you're addressing salespeople, most of the time they are very independent in the way they work, specifically if they are alone to address the French market. If they share the French market into several regions, it's important to make a team building with them so that they do not compete fiercely one another with respect to, for instance, targets, as we were talking about earlier. But if you are addressing not salespeople, but R&D person, for instance, they are most used to working on their own, and I have this company who was doing online games and working on these people were working most of the time at night, and the working time regulation for night work, just like Sunday work, is also specific. And very protective to the employees, because all the surveys that have been made show that there is a higher risk for the health of people working at night very often. And so you have to protect the employees against themselves, against their habits when they are used not working the same way as the others. The other things when you work, when you are addressing remote workers in France, is that French are very keen about what we call the machine à café syndrome, which can be translated into English as what you can do around the coffee machine at work, because many informal discussions happen around the coffee machine in France. We love coffee, but we also have this time around the coffee machine or the restaurant, because it can be extended to the restaurant, where you have informal discussions with your teammates, with your managers, and many very interesting information can take place during these times. And it was very difficult since the COVID-19 strike occurs. How could you swipe this or switch this informal negotiation discussions into teams building, and not team building, but teams building or Slack meetings, in order to have these also experience. There was, but I will hand over to Annelien, because there will be a lot of experiences shared by HR people to invent new ways of having informal team building and informal discussions with your team when everyone is either in Brittany or in Provence or in remote places, and these occurrences then do not occur any longer.
Thank you, Etienne. At the moment, I'm doing a kind of a social audit with a client, where I'm asking like different type of question about remote work, about How do they feel today? What are they doing at the moment? Does that make sense to them? And it's a very interesting, I've got some very, very interesting answers to that. And one of the questions is, how do you feel about remote work, first of all? And the second thing is, what is important for you in terms of management? That's a very broad question. And to that, to these questions, the answer is, I want to see my manager. I want my manager to be in the office with me. I want to see him every day, and I need to be able to talk to him in a formal way, in an informal way. But today, communication and I would say physical communication, machine à café, is the most important thing. I've got some people who went to south of France. They moved to south of France, and they are, I would say, that struggling badly because they are too far away. And we've put in them a kind of contract where they'll be able to do remote work for 6 months, and then in 6 months we'll assess whether they want to stay or whether what are we going to do. And they quite like the fact that they say, okay, it's very open. Let's see in 6 months what's going to happen. In 6 months, we'll be able to change our mind. And again, it shows some kind of agility from the company to say, okay, we can move forward, we can carry on working that way. Or if you change your mind, it doesn't matter, as long as your objectives are done, and as long as you're happy within your work, allowing you to carry on working and get to your objectives. So this is very important. Another important thing as well, which I found at the moment, is we were all talking about autonomy. Yes, we are all working on autonomy, blah, blah, blah. And people by themselves, they assess themselves and they assess that they are not so much, they don't have so much autonomy, or they're not so much autonomous themselves, because they have realized that they, I don't know how to say that, there's a bond with the manager, and the fact that the bond exists means that the autonomy is not as much as they think they could be autonomous. So we have to assess and one of the questions I'm asking to employees is, do you think you've got enough autonomy given by the environment, the working environment and the company? And do you think yourself, in terms of skills, do you think you are autonomous? And that's quite interesting, because people say not that much, not as much as I thought I could be autonomous. So it's a question of balance between the autonomy the company gives to the employee and the skill being autonomous within the role. It's not French as such, but this is something that comes in the French assessment I'm doing at the moment, and I'm hearing and talking about as well. There was another idea I had, but sorry, it just went out of my mind. Sorry, I got it went away. Sorry.
That happens.
Yeah.
Anyway, we are running at the end of this hour. So if you don't have any further questions, I would like to thank you, and especially Steve, for your patience and your questions. This event is recorded, so it will be available on the website of the VCCI shortly. And if you do have further questions or other aspect that you would like us to address from an HR or legal standpoint, please feel free to send us an email, and we will be very happy to propose you a new workshop on how to deal with French laws and French HR. It's really our topic with Anne-Hélène, and so we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.